The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
You're listening to the Tony Kurre Radio Network. You just heard a wonderful show called Mission Minded. We've been doing that show for a long time with Michael Coleman. He's the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAFB, hashtag that. And of course, you can find out everything that the Heart of Alabama Food Bank is into. We were talking about DEI, and of course, that is shown up a lot in our news cycle the last few days. And you wanted to continue to talk about that now, specifically for Feeding America and the Heart of Alabama Food Bank and how it plays out.
Yeah, so Feeding America, for those who don't know, or just recent additions to the show. So Feeding America has a national organization, and they are a wonderful organization. We are so blessed as food banks to have Feeding America. It's the biggest charity in the United States. They bring so many resources. They just do amazing things, help us with fundraising, just across the board. Mm-hmm. But they don't actually deliver food. We have contracts with them. So there's 200 food banks. They're called partner food banks, and every county in the United States is assigned to one of those 200 food banks. We have 35 in Alabama that we're responsible for. So one of the things that's been a core element for Feeding America now for several years has been DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I really understand their push for it because, first of all, our CEO that you met, Claire Babineau-Fontenot, African-American lady from Louisiana. So she's and one of many children, did not grow up in wealth, but anyways, very accomplished, became an attorney, very high up in Walmart, was hired by Feeding America. And I think she does, just for the record, I think she does an outstanding job of leading the organization and casting vision and partnering with us as individual food banks. But this whole question of DEI is something that gets emphasized a lot. And the reason I think, going back to what I said, I think it can be a good thing is we are serving people in the community, white, black, Hispanic, and sometimes we need to be, we just need to understand everybody is not a one size fits all. So sometimes we try to do culturally appropriate food. Hispanic people particularly, we could be guilty, example, of distributing food that they don't even know what it is or how to cook it.
That's really, that is something I have never thought of. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And so it's not pushback. It's, we just need to be mindful of it. It's not give them more food because they're Hispanic or give them more food because they're black. It's just be mindful that you're trying to serve this population and how can we best serve them? So it might be explaining what this food is and how to prepare it, maybe some recipes, things like that. That's a mild version of the EDI, and I think one that's incredibly useful. And I think that's the heart of what Feeding America is getting at. But so with the recent plane crash and Trump saying it could be a result of the EDI, I'll just for a second, just repeat a little bit of what I said on Mission Minded, that the FAA over the last few years, I think, it may have been last few years, have turned down over 1,000 white applicants who were qualified for the position. I'm not saying they'd be good employees, but they were qualified for the position, but they did not hire them based on the fact that they lacked diversity. So they were going for a certain quota of diverse people. Well, there's not enough African Americans and Hispanic and Asian people to fill that void. And so instead of filling it with white people so they wouldn't be running shortages, they chose instead
Michael, why aren't we hearing that? Why aren't we? I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know they turned down.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because what happened is they showed from the last couple of years, they showed a video. It's not up anymore, but it was an African-American over the FAA or high up in the FAA talking about how this is DEI is our number one priority. And people are scratching their head. Wait a minute. What do you mean DI is our number one priority? Why isn't landing aircraft safely your number one priority?
Sure.
Same thing with the military. Military became all about DEI, and transsexual and LGBTQ and all of that. And we're like, wait a minute, our job is to go. And the vast majority of enlisted people are white people
Mm-hmm.
in the United States Army. But our job is to go and break things and kill people and fight for our country and do all those kind of things. And and you got a little bit of that pushback, like the same thing about, well, if you bring women into combat,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody cares if women are in combat as long as you don't have to lower the standard for women. Well, it's not an insult to women to say they're built differently. They can't
Yep.
typically handle the load of an infantry person, carry a 70-pound ruck for, 100 miles or whatever. So we're like, I don't care what your color is. I don't care what your gender is. Here's the standard to survive in war. Can you do it? If you can, great. But if you can't, I'm not going to lower the standard because otherwise your feelings are hurt.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of the pushback. So when you get in, so you see in some instances, DEI makes all the sense in the world. Like being more compassionate, being more inclusive, making sure you're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole when you're serving a Black population, Hispanic, Asian, whatever it is. But when Trump pushed back on this and said this aircraft, so everybody's gone silent on DEI. What Trump's, and I didn't fully explain this in Mission Money, but what Trump, I believe, was trying to do was when he put a freeze on it, on the spending was, there's so many millions and billions of dollars, governmental dollars,
Mm-hmm.
that are reserved for DEI training and DEI positions. The fear, I think, in Trump was that once he said DI is over, it's dead, that those funds would be redistributed in something that had different language, but still was DI rooted.
Yeah.
And the reason we know that's true is because there was I want to say it was a Coast Guard, don't hold me to this. It was an African American woman who was the chief diversity officer. That was on the website. Well, then the next day, she was still there, but her title was changed to senior executive.
Mm.
Okay. So they hid titles, they changed words, still the same principles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what he's saying is, well, wait a minute, we're not going to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. So when he did the freeze and they had to justify what the expenditures were, they wanted time to look into these cabinets and say, wait a minute, you've got $100 million for EDI training or DEI training. What are you going to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And they have to justify that. I think that's what the intent was. Other nonprofits and stuff, and the help with the media, it just created a lot of angst.
Yeah.
So Feeding Alabama is our state association that helps the partner food banks in Alabama, distribute, get grants, all the other kind of stuff. And they do wonderful work. But they called and we had a meeting and it was, what are we going to do? How do we prepare for this? And I get it. Feeding America, there's hand wringing because that was something you were loud and proud about. You want to talk about DI on social media. Now you can't find anybody that wants to talk about DI on social media.
Yeah.
Fear they're going to become a governmental target. So, I just said, look, I don't think that it may come across when he focuses on DI as to some people as feeling racist or whatever. I think he genuinely is just like, look, we need the best people we have, and especially in super critical, life-saving positions.
Sure.
And like he said, I don't care what their race is. I just want the best person in there. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. DEI was bringing some good things, and it was heightening awareness. But you want to make sure you didn't go as far as what's happened, like with the FAA, and not hire qualified white people and then leave the position empty because there's not enough minorities to fill that position. So it's a real balancing act, but there's so much anxiety, even in feeding right now, it bleeds over. So everybody's kind of going silent. Everybody's saying, what do we do? And my suggestion to everybody is, look, it's Trump's second week. You knew he was going to come in with a bang. You knew he was going to affect everything he could because a president, especially a president that won the level he did, is going to feel like I have a mandate and I have a certain amount of political capital. They also know it's his last term.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have a lot of political capital in year 4, probably in year 3. So he's got 2 years with a Congress that's Republican, even though it's a slim margin. Especially the first year, but you knew he was going to come in trailblazing. Instead of responding to everything, everybody just needs to take a deep breath and navigate through, still be the best citizen you can, still love people in spite of their race or color or differences or their political affiliation or their football team or everything else. And I'll end it with this. I have a wonderful Sunrise Rotary Club, and I actually mentioned this to them this morning, that our club, we have about 35 in the club. It's not a huge club, but we have young and old, we have black and white, we have male and female. I don't know everybody's political persuasion, but we have such a tight-knit club. Things like politics don't come up because we just love each other. We do community work together. We serve together. And we genuinely consider each other family. It would be so wonderful if the world could get past some of that and just recognize the strength that each member brings. We celebrate that, but we also recognize that each member goes through struggles, and we're there for them in that. I'm not sure that's what DEI was bringing to the table. I think it brought some harmful things, some good things, but harmful things. Man, I wish we could just split the difference.
No doubt.
And all treat each other with love and respect. And I know that's pie in the sky, but it would be nice.
It's got to start somewhere, man. It starts with the individual. This is Bite by Bite.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.